Hey everybody, welcome back to Restaurant Food Fast. Not cooking nothing today. We're going to go over some terms that I use. I just use them. People tell me that they don't, some people don't understand what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to go over some basic glossary terms that I use to try and make sure everybody's on the same page. First one that everybody asks me about is a roux. I use it all the time. Anybody who cooks uses roux all the time. It's just one of the ways to thicken things. There's a bunch of ways you can thicken. Roux is probably one of the easier ones, and it also gives you the least lumpy product, so you don't have to strain your gravies, which is another way. Even if you do make it lumpy, who cares? Put it through a strainer, you're done. But anyway, back to the roux. A roux is equal parts, traditionally this is, equal parts fat and flour. Again, traditionally, it's butter. You can use any edible fat you want. You can use bacon grease, you can use oil, you can use any type of fat, and you add flour to it. The ratio is 1 to 1. If you use 2 tablespoons of fat to 2 tablespoons of flour, it's going to thicken 1 cup of liquid. With a blonde roux. Now there are traditionally 3 different stages of a roux. There's the blonde, the tan or peanut butter, and the brown. And all that is how long you cook it. So you put your fat in the pan, and you can look at any of the episodes that I've made any type of thickened sauces. You put your fat in the pan, you put your flour in the pan, and you let it cook. The longer you let it cook, the darker it's going to get. The darker it gets, the less liquid it's going to thicken. So a blonde roux is basically, like I said, 2 tablespoons to 2 tablespoons to 1 cup. And that's how you judge how much you're making. If you're making 5 cups, you need to up that 10 to 5 cups. There are so many different types of roux out there, it's ridiculous. If you go on to any, particularly Cajun sites, the spices you can add, the donenesses you put into it, it's infinite. As many people that make a roux are the amounts of different roux that are available. Same thing as if you'll see, I notice Emerald does it a lot. He will cook either the Trinity, which is the, onion, celery, and bell pepper, which is a take on the traditional mirepoix of onion, celery, and carrot. And he dusts it all with flour because he sauteed it. There's another term I want to get into, saute. Saute means a dry pan. Basically, when you cook a fried egg, saute. You put a little bit of oil in it, and then your product. So if you do that, and you have some oil in there, and you dust it with flour, and then you add liquid, it's still a roux. It makes a smooth gravy. So there's one of them. What's the other ones that I use? The terms. We're talking about saute. Saute has the least amount of oil. It's almost dry. Then there's pan fry. Pan fry is where the oil comes about halfway up the side of your product. So you fry one side in oil, turn it over, fry the other side. That's a pan fry. Deep fry is where it's completely immersed. Now you can deep fry in a deep fryer, or you can deep fry in a deeper pan. As long as your product is completely submersed in oil, it's a deep fry. That's a dry heat method. Regardless, the oil's a liquid, but it's not like water. The water cooking is the braising, braising, poaching, things of that nature. Got to be careful with those too. Just because you're using water doesn't mean it doesn't dry out your product. Waters have a tendency to dry out the product more than dry heat methods do, because people tend to put them in the waters longer. It'll turn whatever you're cooking into a dry mass of mess in a very short time. Alton Brown just had a big show on poaching and wet cook methods, and how he explained how to do it non-traditional. Traditional method of a poach is you bring your your water up to under a boil, just at a simmer, 185 degrees or so, 190 degrees. You put your fish or whatever you're going to poach in that liquid, and you have a window that's like this, very, very small, to get that product out of there in time before it dries out. Now what he suggests doing is take your liquid up to that temperature, put your product in it, you take it up to that temperature to kill all the bacteria. Once you get it in there, take it down to the doneness you want, and you can let it poach in that temperature, because it'll never go above it and you won't dry it out. But that's the wet methods. When you can combine them. You've seen me saute things, then add liquid. The trick with doing that is you want to make sure your saute is at the proper stage. Once you add liquid to a saute, the browning stops. It ends right then and there. It won't brown again unless you burn out all that liquid. So you got to kind of be, when you're doing a combination method, you want to make sure you're at the right spot. So if you want to caramelize your onions first, make sure they're the color you want them before you add the liquid, because unless you do it numerous times and keep getting rid of that liquid, they're not going to get any darker. What are some other things that people ask me about? Sizes, dice, bâtonnet, julienne, tournai, all those things. I have New Professional Chef. This is the 5th edition, which tells you how long it's been since I was in culinary school. This is used by most of the major schools in the country. That's a really, really good book. If you want to spend some money on a book, go buy this one. It tells you all the different things that I'm telling you here. Explains really well. Goes through all the different cooking methods. But they tell you exactly what the dices are and what the sizes are. I don't do that unless I'm in a restaurant setting. If you're cooking fine cuisine, you want everything uniform. There's 2 reasons for that. One, presentation, look of it. It looks nice, it looks uniform, it looks pretty. The other thing is, the more uniform everything is, they're all going to be done at the same time. So if you are cooking, say you cut up potatoes and you have them all different sizes, when you boil them off or cook them however you're going to cook them, of course the small ones are going to be done before the big ones are. So if you get them uniform, they will all be done at the same time. But that goes in here like julienne. Fine julienne is a 1/16 of an inch. So you're basically making a stick that's 1/16 of an inch. Julienne is an 1/8, I believe. Yeah, an 1/8. Bâtonnet. Bâtonnet is a 1/4 inch. So it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and the dice kind of corresponds with that. So if you take julienne, bâtonnets, allumette, which is the julienne, another word for the julienne, all of those are sticked pieces. So if you take those sticks and line them up and cut them, now you have your dices. And the dice, large dice, ranges all the way up to 3/4, a big cube. You don't see me doing that a lot here. I go for textures, what I want the end product to be. I get them even, but when I'm cooking at home, I'm not real concerned about how perfect they are. You know, when you go to culinary school, you get tested. They actually measure them. So you go in and you do, your bâtonnets, and then you do your small dices. They take them with a ruler and they measure them. Make sure you do them all correctly. You have a pal and they'll take them and spread them all out. See how many are odd shaped. And you get graded on it. Like I say, you use that if you're in a high end, but if you're in a home setting, you're just cooking for yourself, unless you feel like it and you want to work on your knife skills, go for it. What are some of the other things? Tournays. I've said tournays a couple times. How do you describe it? It's football shaped. There are, I believe, 7 sides on it, and it's just a little, about that long, and it's football shaped with 7 sides. It's just a pretty way of doing it. When I do these things at home, I don't do tournays at home. I don't want the waste. I don't want to have, because all that peeling off to get the tournay, you have that excess. So I don't do that. We did them in restaurants because it looks nice, but not when I'm at home. Let's see, what are some of the other things? Mince, generally, you'll see me when I cut onions, I'll cut most of the time into a small dice. If you want to mince, mince product is where you take it and you just run your knife through it. Let me get one and I'll show you. Okay, this is a traditional chef's knife. This is about normal size. When I was working in a production kitchen, it was much bigger. But when you mince, all you're doing is taking that entire product and just rocking the blade. And you go through it time and time again. It's very, very fine. Chiffonade. Chiffonade is if you would take a leafed product, anything that's flat, you roll it up real fine and you cut it into strips. That's a chiffonade. So there's all these great names for things that are just really, really simple. That's one of the things I like about watching Emeralds. He makes fun of it all the time. You know, he uses the big French term and then tells you it's just doing this. You know, knife skills. That's one of the things that scares everybody when they first start in the kitchen. You are in control of that knife. If you hold your knife from right here, which is you find basically I look at it as you find the balance point. It's normally right in front of the handle. Pinch the blade, wrap your fingers around it. It's only going to do what you tell it to. You got to watch this hand. The other thing is people, they want to put their fingers out. That flat part of your hand is right where that knife is going to rest. And as long as you can feel it, your thumb is tucked way back here and you hold like that. So if you can get a product and you're holding it and you're guiding it and pushing it with your thumb, you can just sit here all day and you can feel it running against your skin. You're not going to hurt yourself. Remember, keep your hands under. I mean, anybody who's worked in the kitchen has gotten cut multiple times. I almost took this finger right off because, I'm cutting an onion, talking to somebody, and the onion skin slips. So my finger that's back here shoots out like that, and boom, down comes the knife. It happens. You just, you have to be careful. Don't get ahead of yourself. But again, you're working in a production kitchen, it's different. You're not cutting an onion, you're cutting, 100 pounds of onions. You're getting everything prepped, you're getting everything ready for the day. Trying to think of what are some other terms I use. Bechamel. Bechamel is one of the mother sauces. All it is a roux, which we just talked about, with milk. That's it. Traditionally, you use an onion piqué, which is you take a onion and you stud it with cloves and spice, and you let it, when you're making that sauce, you put it in the sauce. That's it. That's all it is. It's your basis for any cheese sauce. Anytime you're making chowders and stuff like that, you can make your chowder with the bechamel sauce and add your product to it. It's one of the easiest sauces to deal with. Let's see, what else do I use? I'm just going to start looking at some of these glossary terms because I know I use them and I just use them off the top of my head and I don't remember which ones I use. So I'm going to take a look. Oh, okay, yeah. I know I've used veloutés. A velouté is, bechamel is a roux with milk. Velouté is a roux with either a chicken stock or a veal stock. It's one of the base sauces. They said there's 5 mother sauces. There's 2 of them, bechamel, velouté. I look at it as your traditional gravy. You're going to do turkey gravy at Thanksgiving. You take a roux and you take the drippings from the turkey that you've taken the fat off of, put it together, it's a velouté. That's all it is. They have these great names for it. And yeah, of course, a velouté says it's a white base. So it's got to be a chicken stock or a light veal stock or something like that. But if you think of everything you make from that roux, it's all pretty much the same. You're taking that basic thickening agent and adding liquid to it. That's it. That's how you make all your sauces. You can do it in reverse. You can take a hot liquid and add things to it to thicken, such as a whitewash, which is flour and water. And now people say, oh, when I do that, it's always lumpy. Big trick with flour and water is cold water. Never ever use warm water. If you use cold water, the flour doesn't clump up. So you take cold water and flour, mix it together, dump it into a hot liquid. When it reaches boiling, it's thick. That's it. Done. Cornstarch, same way. You can make a whitewash cornstarch in liquid. It just depends. Like a cornstarch gives you a clearer gravy, whereas a flour-based whitewash gives you that, what is it, opaque. You can't see through it. So the differences in gravies that you see, like a TV dinner gravy where it's all clear looking brown, that's a cornstarch base. And it's just what you're looking for, what you want to use. Chinese food traditionally uses either rice flour or cornstarch, and it gives it that clear gravy look instead of the traditional Thanksgiving gravy that's the dark. This is, I've gone through this before. This is a mandolin. To me, it's one of the essentials in the kitchen. It can make short work of all these cutting needs that you do. I go through these things, you know, the bâtonnet, all the stuff I just talked about. This will do it for you. If you have a decent mandolin, a good one, a couple $100. They're all stainless steel. They're really, really nice. It's basically that Ronco-matic slicer that you see, kicked up a notch. Under here, there are blades. This disc, I don't know if you can catch it in the cameras, but right now this is set for like a bâtonnet. So this is, you know, quarter, maybe 3/8 of an inch wide. Now these blades cut it one way, and this top blade cuts it another, so you get the sticks perfect. The episode got cut, but you have to be really careful with these. They're very sharp. Good ones are very sharp. This is what holds your product. If you don't have this, don't use it. I was cutting potatoes on here, cut my hand twice on this thing. I mean, cut it. Didn't have to go to the hospital, but I was using this, sliced it all the way down, and took a disc off of my hand right here. The guy who runs the camera cut it out, but it hurts like mad. But this changes. So you can cut, now there's no blades coming up, if you can see. It's all smooth in. And as you adjust this, the plate goes up and down. So you can do really, really fine discs of whatever you're using, all the way to big, thick ones. And now it has more of a julienne to it, if you can see it now. It looks like a cone. And those are the little blades. And you can just shred whatever you're making, if you're making home or hash browns, something like that. This is a great thing to have around the kitchen. It just, like I say, it makes quick work of all the cutting stuff that you have to do if you're doing a lot of it. You put it to bâtonnet, run your potatoes through it, makes the sticks. Just grab a knife, turn them all into a pile, chop them down, you've got diced. You know, nice small dice. Just, it's so much faster than having to do it by hand. And when you do it by hand, you're supposed to take it, you know, and you cut it flat off, you make the potatoes square and you have all that excess. Just run it through and away you go. You know, I'm not expecting anyone who runs a restaurant to be looking to this show for answers. This show is more for people who don't know about cooking. Just trying to show you guys the easy ways to go about doing things. It's not as prevalent anymore. Heat is a bad thing when it comes to dairy products. If you overheat dairy, a lot of times you can separate the fat from the liquid part of the product, and it breaks your sauce. It doesn't happen as much anymore because the pasteurization techniques that they use kind of keeps everything bound together. But you can still break it. You can fix some broken sauces. A lot of times it's really, really difficult. Once you separate those things out, to get them back together, you generally have to increase the volume that you're working with. So you have to increase it, and then you have to thicken it again. And you're basically just hiding what happened. You're never going to get that really, really smooth sauce again. Happens a lot with cheese. If you over cheese it, or if it gets way too much, what happens is there's not enough binder to keep those fats where they're supposed to be. They separate out. So when you're making a cheese sauce, that bechamel, the flour that you have in there, kind of keeps all that fat together. It locks it up. If you use too much heat with your cheese, it's actually the cheese separating, and the fat will come out of it, and you'll end up with this curdled look. Really, really difficult to fix. Like I say, you can fudge it by adding more liquid and re-thickening it. It's still not going to be the same. It's really, really hard to do. So just, when you're using sauces, once you get them up and boiled, once you have your basic bechamel and you're at the thickness you want, turn your heat down. Don't keep it at a boil. You want to keep it nice and low. It'll cause two things for you. One, you won't have to worry about breaking your sauce, and two, you're not going to burn it. Those thick sauces tend to burn real easy. Because they're thick, if you're not stirring them all the time, they'll sit on the bottom of the pan. That direct heat just burns them. So just remember, once you get it up to heat, reduce it. Even if you're making a cheese sauce, get your bechamel up to heat. Take your roux, take your seasonings, take your milk, make that thicker sauce. Once it's thickened, turn down the heat, add your cheese. It'll still melt. And you won't have to worry about having all those problems with broken sauces. You can see, if you want to do an example of a broken sauce, you can do it real easy with a buffalo wing sauce. So we did that episode on buffalo wings. Take your hot sauce, put it in a pan, pull it off the pan, swirl some butter in it, and it's going to make that nice orange sauce. Take that sauce and put it right back over the heat. Let it boil up again. Boom, you'll watch it. It'll separate. You'll have clear, and then you'll have this curdly stuff. That's a broken sauce. You can do that to a whole pot of whatever you're cooking if you don't watch the heat. So you can see how to do it. It'll be cheap, and it'll show you what it looks like to be broken. Then try and fix it. See if you can take that and re-add butter to it, or do what you're going to try and do to get it to work again, and see if you can get that sauce back from being broken. Let's see, what else? What else do we go through? I'm just going to start looking here. Smoke points, that's another one I talk about. Smoke points, oils. Oils and fats have different temperature ranges that you can use them in. Butter. Okay, take butter as one of the basic fats that you saute in. If you take butter straight from the fridge, put it in a pan, cook it, it has a very low smoke point. You can't put a lot of heat to it before it starts turning brown. Now if you clarify it, which is put the big thing of butter into a pot or bain-marie, which is basically a pot in water with hot water, the butter is going to separate into fats and solids, and you skim off all the liquid, which is the waters and fats from the top of that, and what you have left is the oils, which is clarified butter. It's what you get when you dip your lobster. That has a little bit higher temperature because the things that you skim off of that are what cause it to burn. Even with it's clarified, it still has a lower smoking point than some of the other oils. Generally, if I want a butter flavor, I'll combine two oils. I like olive oil and butter. So what happens is it raises that smoking point. Any oil you have is going to reach a point where it starts to smoke, and then it flashes into fire. That smoke point is what you're looking at. The higher the smoke point, that's why people fry in like peanut oil, because it has a very high smoking point. You can crank it up, and you're not going to smoke it. It's not going to catch fire. But each of your oils, like I say, butter, the general ones I use are butter, some sort of vegetable oil, and olive oil. I try not to use vegetable oil too much unless I'm doing frying. So it's between olive oil and butter when I cook. And I'll use combinations of both so I don't burn the butter. There are recipes for burnt butter, beurre noisette. When noisette is browned, or I know noir is black in French, but noisette is, I forget what the actual term means. But it's when you let that butter, if you put it in a pan and you cook it, just the butter, it's going to go from melting to start changing colors. And once it reaches brown and it has kind of a nutty flavor to it, it's a beurre noisette, burnt butter. And they use that to put over fish and other things, and they add lemon to it and all kinds of stuff. But it's just, these terms sound like they're all very arduous processes. It's really not. It's just because it's in French. And traditional cooking, you can get French or Italian, and it's all going to be al dente. Big term that means don't cook your pasta to mush. You want it to still have some character left to it. Al dente means to the tooth, so you still have to chew it. You can't just drink your pasta. And when you see all these terms, once you start looking at what they are, just crank up the internet, start looking at glossary terms if you don't understand the cooking. You'll find out that most of these things that you're looking at are so ridiculously easy. It's just the names they use because they're not English. Most traditional recipes are peasant foods. They're all things that were done by everyday people like you and I that had to figure out a way to make dinner while they were out in the fields bringing in the product. So things like coq au vin. Coq au vin, it's basically chicken and wine. All you do is put it in a pot, let it cook all day. Come back from doing what you're doing, it's coq au vin. Yay! It's this great big high-end plate that it's ridiculous. What are some of the other ones? The ones that are real popular now, the Middle Eastern dishes. It's the clay pot cooking, and I can't think of the name of it right now. But it's basically a Middle Eastern or Indian way of doing kind of like a paella, which, again, the name paella, it's a great big French or Spanish dish. It's really, really easy. You've got a big pot, you put water, rice, whatever seasonings you want, food in it, cook it. That's it. It's done. It's a paella. It's not hard. You see people making, paellas are one of the great party dishes because they have these things like woks that are massive. And you can literally cook for 100 people in one big pot. And you just dump a bunch of rice in it, and you can have seafood paellas, you can have just whatever. Traditionally there's chicken in it and all kinds of stuff. And all they do is put it all in the liquid. And the only thing you got to watch is like your seafood. Because if you put shrimp in that, when you start cooking it and you've got chicken in it, it's going to take that chicken an hour and a half to cook. Yeah, those shrimp are going to be done in about 5 minutes, so you're going to end up with these little really, really nasty rubbery pieces of shrimp. So you throw them in at the end. But it's all really simple. The clay pot cooking, the reason they use clay pots is that the clay holds heat better. So they can take these things over the open stoves. They don't, in the Middle East, they don't use, the street vendors don't use a stove. They just have a big fire going. So they put these clay pots next to it, the pot heats up, and it's a nice even cooking method, and it stays hot. They seal it up, and you can do the same type of paella dish in this clay pot, and it just sits there, and it'll hold heat forever. If you keep it near the edge, it'll just sit there and just keep sucking up the heat. All these things you see, they're not difficult. They're really, really easy. You just got to understand the principle behind it is most of the food that you get is either going to be super fast or super slow. It's all about timing. They want all of the recipes come from traditional recipes come from the peasants, the normal everyday people. They want to put a dinner out. They don't want to spend a lot of time on the stove, so they come in and they either have really fast stuff like marsala, romano, things like that that are super quick, come out real easy, or they're really long, where you have ossobuco Milanese, all the different styles. Ossobuco is basically veal shanks, and you make a base of tomato product and whatever, tomato product, onions, all that stuff. You put the veal shanks in it. It's a braising, 3/4 liquid. not fat, liquid, up the sides of your product. Cover it, throw it in the oven for as long as you possibly want. Does not matter. You just put it. I've cooked ossobuco and oxtails for 12 hours. Doesn't make a difference to it. It does not make a difference. It's like making pot roast. Pot roast is another one. It's a braising. 3/4 liquid. Throw it in the oven forever. Go out, do whatever you're going to do, come back home. As long as you cover it, it's not going to evaporate. Don't have the oven up too high, 325. Nice and low, long time. Comes out perfect every time. So don't be afraid of these things. It's all these terms that you hear, they sound fancy. It's just a lot of times because it's in a different language. Most of the stuff that you do is super easy. I'm trying to think of reduction. I do a lot of reductions. Reduction is basically that. It's the word. It's reducing. So if you take white wine, you want to do a white wine and butter sauce. Take white wine, put it in your pan. I usually use a nice wide pan because as that boils, it gives more room for the waters to escape. You can reduce that all the way down till you burn the pan. And that's basically, it's taking the water level out. You take it down to whatever point you want, add your butter to it, and there you go. White wine butter sauce. It's super simple. What else? What else? Kentucky, I'm rooting for you. I'm looking at all these things, trying to figure out which ones I use and may have said. Gratins. Everybody sees gratins. Gratin means crust. That's it. You put breadcrumbs, butter, you put Parmesan, it's just browning the top of something. It's a gratin. It means crunchy. I think that's pretty much all I'm going to go through for today. Hopefully next week we'll have something more that I'm looking to cook. Just this has been a very busy summer with vacations and graduations and everything going on. So that's pretty much it for today, I think. If I didn't go over something that somebody needs me to go over or would like me to go over, again, just drop an email. I'll get to it. Other than that, go out, cook something fun. Yes, I know. Have fun.